this, you have this background in theology, and I think that the way that you've used the form, I think for me, yes, it's helped me with anatomy and how things connect, but I think more than anything, the notion that I feel I've stuck with now for 20 years is this idea that I am not this body and I'm not this mind, but I am a spirit occupying this body and utilizing this mind to have a human experience for spiritual enlightenment, whatever that is. And there's a part of that, I guess, learning and growing that I've always kind of looked to you and always continue to learn from you, that actually I feel like heightens my spirit more than my mind. And that, and so like how you got from theology and Rolfing into using the form as a medium to teach in so many ways, what the human experience is about, I think is what's so unique about your dissections compared to anybody else.
You fill my heart with pitter patter. My eyes are wet. You're so wonderful.
It's true.
And kind. And my head just went, it's got so big.
But where are you, because you've been doing this now for 20 plus years.
Yeah, this is I'm in the midst of my 27th dissection season. And this has been a 19-month-long dissection season because I haven't really left the lab for over for a year and a half or more now. And it's changed a lot for me and changed me a lot. And much as you are looking to, reach different levels of your exploration of what your work means to you, similarly for me, I'm looking into next year as kind of the first year where I'm not the main teacher in the classroom, and where I'm doing another deep dive project, much as the one I've recently completed, completed at the physical level of the dissection, but not completed in terms of the extra 170 hours of footage I'm about to edit. But once I've completed that editing, I'm going to start another huge project. And I've just realized that my energy needs to be completely committed to that. And so I'm going to be kind of in the background in my classes next year, working on these projects while my stellar team locally teaches the classes. And that way I'll be there as like gravy. We can swing the group through my project and let them see what I'm doing. And I'll pop in on occasion and dissect something. But in order to give people still a connection to me directly. But I looked at the blossoming schedule at our lab and realized that if I didn't exclude myself from it to the project, I couldn't do the project. And if I keep on doing the teaching of the classes, then I don't do the projects that take the work further, right? So this past year was such a deep dive in two forms that you should have seen me on our closing ceremony, Sue. I literally was like uncontrollably blubbering. It was such an emotional transition for me to let go of those two, because the teaching that they did for me is indescribable, and they'll continue to do so for so many others. But their families were ready to have them home, and I had to say my goodbyes. But to literally photograph and put on camera the dissection of every muscle in the body and every bone, to work through it at that level of detail, brought me to a level of excitement and constant discovery and ahas that I hadn't felt in quite a while, for kind of having to, redo my program again and again, which is incredibly wonderful and powerful if it's your first or second or even your 10th time. If it's your 350th time, as much as I'm excited about it, it's not my cutting edge. My cutting edge is this deeper dive. And so it wasn't 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the end of this 17-month-long project that I realized what I had to do next, which was to similarly deep dive specifically on the nervous system. So I'm gonna spend like a year and a half just filming me dissecting the nervous system in extreme detail, so that I can create a document. What I've created now is already probably sufficient to hold the yoga, Pilates, fitness industry, massage for decades. What I've done, but if I can add a similar depth of exploration and explanation and explication of the nervous system, I feel like I will have done a service at a similar level to the medical, naturopathic, osteopathic, and physio communities that I haven't, in other words, they're a little differently educated, right? They're educated in that particular area to a step a bit beyond the industries that you and I are customarily speaking to. And I feel that it will do service both to those industries and give them a chance to see, at this deeper level of the nervous system, but also meet just the standard curriculums of those other folks. And then it's very possible that I might need to do one more deep dive after that on the heart tree. But I'm going to see how much I can account for it, in this project. But if I feel like I've given it short shrift, because they're tied together, right? You can't take a nerve out without cutting a blood vessel. So I'll be identifying all that on camera. But
right there, talking, it's like I just keep thinking, so the most complex system in the entire body that to me is so exceptionally misunderstood is the nervous system, right? I remember being in school and the hierarchy model of, it's the central nervous system. And then from the central nervous system, you have a peripheral nervous system. And then under the peripheral nervous system, you have somatosensory and the autonomic. And then under the autonomic nervous system, you got sympathetic, parasympathetic, enteric. And I think what's exciting, because I know that if anybody can land this notion, is that the nervous system is one complete system and that we've cut it up to understand it.
Right.
In the end, it's all one thing. And I always think of the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system as like a power couple that are actually equal in their connection. You can't, they're really, I get it. If I hit your arm with a bat, your arm might hurt you for a while. But if I hit your head in just the right way, your arm might never work again. So I get it. There is
I feel it.
There is a hierarchy.
That's a great.
It is, right?
No, that's a very good point. Yeah. Right? Yeah, you could take the arm clear off and you'll hang in there, but you can't take the head clear off and hang in there.
That's right. And so the brain really is so powerful. And I always draw a point in when I'm sharing this idea of the nervous system and the connective tissue system as being these, in also a power couple, that they're working together, that even separating those two systems is actually hard, because the environment that the nervous system is thriving in or not is actually inherently important. It's critically important to the function of its efficiency. And the Noe group saying fascia is not relevant is to me very myopic, just as much as saying that the brain is the only thing to study in the nervous system, when really this whole idea that, there's a whole bunch of free nerve endings and proprioception and mechanoreception all happening in fascia, not muscle. And so,
right.
Again, we're changing models. We're updating models of anatomy that have been around forever and trying to create clarity because we can. And if it's anything that I've seen you do in every dissection we've ever done, because every form is different and informing us in a completely different way. The conversations are different. The energy is different. Each form is a new mystery to just kind of ponder upon. And whereas some people are sitting there thinking about, well, how did this person die and what went wrong? It's like, you really have to look at what went right and the miracle of that the human form, that we get to travel around the human experience in this incredible form with all of these fine parts and all of this mystery. You know, and I think your way of dialoguing that is just, again, it's different than anybody else, and it is because of just the true nature of Gil. And your, you know, your way of wanting to, I think, express something that is really far more important than the physical form at all.
Well, and that is really like, I'm like, dang, I'm running out of, like, how many decades do we get here? You know, because to me, like, the physical body and this exploration has been a way of sort of bringing the body online and sort of into mind, literally, for a guy who was just a pure intellectual, you know, meta ethicist at the University of Chicago. And my own attempt to be an embodied person, to feel myself bodily, right? To have my consciousness actually live in my body as opposed to just floating around in the meta-ethical astral plane or something like that. And so, you know, to get the body sort of down, like, okay, we got that in the can, has turned out to take a really long time. And I'm going to have to work on it some more. And yet it's just like a piece of the story. You know, as magnificent a treasure and gift is as it is to learn about the body, to be in the body. To my mind, it's just an element. What about, you know, what about our emotional lives? What about our spiritual lives? What about our universal consciousness? What about enlightenment? You know, these things are not to be forgotten in the quest to be embodied, right? And they're really a path in. I want consciousness in every cell and nucleus of my body. I want the communication happening throughout. I want to kind of fill myself out, you know, to the infinitesimal degree with consciousness. And for me, part of accomplishing that is to witness it all. You know, in other words, I'm like this hungry tourist, Somanautic, who's sailing around the body, like greedily witnessing it. And the more you do it, instead of it being like, I've been to Malta 3 times already, I ain't going back there, we're going to somewhere else now. You know, it's like, no, the human body for me is a universe so rich and so you know, the infinite ingress of exploration that can take place here. I mean, and I'm just doing the gross anatomy, right? I mean, even in this nervous system dissection, I'm looking at just to demonstrate the gross nervous system, not the level of which you mentioned a moment ago. Yeah, our free sensory nerve endings in our fascia. You know, that I'm going to be still standing at the precipice of belief from my colleagues who actually know how to look at that stuff. You know, whereas I'm like, give me a scalpel and a hemostat, I'll see what I can do. It turns out you could do a lot, actually, and it also turns out it's a very much as above, so below thing. So when you're witnessing a fractal form, it doesn't really matter that much at which point you enter it, because it's a set of, you know, patterns that repeat. And so, you know, I find that I don't have much trouble talking to a molecular biologist because they're seeing relationships that I can identify with and relate to from my own exploration at the gross level. And not many people do gross dissection like this, but because like, who wants to work with cadavers for their whole life? You know, that's would be the attitude, and I would understand it. There's not that many people who can take this particular journey on this fully. There are more than I thought, because they're starting to move in on me, literally. Like, people just keep moving here. It's funny, but so for the few of us who find that this scale is the scale that suits our sensibilities, it also just suits my lack of education, because, you know, I didn't get a master's degree in exercise physiology or something. I'm a friggin' religion guy who just wanted to look inside and didn't ever stop. So that's kind
Well,
of how,
one
it
of the
went.
things I think with, the all of the people that I talk to on Anatomical Gangster, I always say what's amazing is the connection that I have with all of them. The common thread was fascia, which is the irony of connective tissue, right? I mean, it just actually is the brilliant thread of this first season overall. It's everybody has some relationship to some level of fascia. And one thing I remember you saying, this is a long time ago when I said, how can I very simply describe to people when there's all this nomenclature saying the same thing from the top line of connective tissue and then fascia and fascias and superficial fascia and deep fascia and visceral fascia. And then all of a sudden you're into extracellular matrix and interstitium. And you just simply said, look it, if you can cut it with a blade, it's fascia. If you're looking at it in a microscope, it's the extracellular matrix. And it made sense to me at that point that it really just depends upon if you're looking at it macroscopically or microscopically.
Yep.
But the brilliance of, I think, understanding how the environment to which everything connects is not just of the form, but it's outside of me as well. That it oddly is how I'm connecting with everyone else too, is somehow a frequency in that system.
This is the juicy part. This is why I say I can't stop. My career can't stop at exploring the physicality, because the physicality is just a footprint. Now, the physicality is just like a track in the dirt, literally, of greater realities, greater levels of connection. And that's why my perifascial explorations have been the most mystically compelling ones, in the sense that something that seemed ephemeral and elusive, once understood, is a demonstration that just because something is maybe more subtle than your initial perceptions can comprehend, you can't say, well, therefore it wasn't there then, or something. So between us, there's connection, and those things that which we perceive as space is quite full, and full with consciousness. That's the if fascia is the theme holding your first season together, and fascia is the tissue, bringing a sense of relationship and continuity to tissues that we imagine different in our bodies, then consciousness is that same substance that is palpable. It's not so subtle. It's like a friggin' 2x4 to the head once you get used to it. It's like folks who do craniosacral or something. I know you do that stuff. It's really super subtle on your first day, and maybe in your first year. And then once you've been doing it for a while, you're like, duh, like, oh my gosh, it's like thumping in your hand or whatever. Like, it's a very obvious thing. It's not subtle anymore. And I feel similarly that the texture of space in between us is not that subtle. Actually, it's pretty thick with emotion and feeling and wavelengths that are physiologically active, in our bodies and beyond our bodies. I can get all choked up here, and you'll start to have juices come out of your eyes. What the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, you're gonna tell me that's you and not me, or blah blah blah. It's like, no, there's this incredible continuity that hopefully evokes some empathy and compassion, because it's just
lacking in our world today is what it is. It's lacking. Consciousness is lacking. My gosh, some of the unconscious behavior of so many people around. And I definitely, being a brand owner and everything, suddenly you're identified as just like that. When I think to myself, that's just the body of work. But I am pretty much under the belief that, like, who I am or what I do isn't the point of the human experience. It's the connections to which I make that elevate the frequency of everything around me. That's the point of why I'm here. That's why these conversations are needed, is to, in some ways, continue to wake me up and wake up the frequencies around me through this incredible, human vibration, human frequency. And I think that's why, fascia got so, it just felt right to me, is when you look at it on a microscopic level and you see this self-assembly that you see in trees and you see in the grass and you see in water and you see on a rock. And it's like, how is it possible that like matter can all have the same, inherent structure and not think that it's all connected, or to argue the point that it's all made of the same thing? Like, I am the tree, I am of the frequency of the water, I am of you, we are together. And so every time I'm like, dealing with somebody who wants to combat me or has to have their voice heard and I must be right, I'm like, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. Can that then now diffuse your, problem that you have and calm you down enough where the frequency doesn't make me want to stab myself in the eye with your phone? You know what I mean? It's like, it's important. And I know, and it seems so far off to think that doing a dissection or, looking at the inner universe isn't also informing of us, of the universe that's clearly around us, pointing itself out at us all of the time, that we are just refusing, I think, as a society to embrace or to acknowledge at all. It's like almost like we want to tune everything out and everything's now on our phone. And it's, how many views did I get on my Instagram page? It's like, who cares? Like, what does that even matter? But somehow or other, my value and my purpose is all on how many people subscribe to my Instagram page or something. And I think to myself, what happened to after school going out into a forest and playing make-believe? Like, what's happening to our society? I mean, I think, I'm curious what you would even say to that, is like, where do we go in the urban jungle that's being created for us today, where now everything is online and that human connection is through a screen rather than standing in front of me or touching a tree or hugging my cat, or, where are we going? What is happening to us?
I could get cynical, but I could also get hopeful. And I do feel that there are sort of interesting stages of the evolvement of our intelligence as a species. And we're in like technological diapers at the moment. And we're like playing, it's like we've been given these toys and we're obsessed with them. But part of our obsession with them is their power, right? And they do, oddly, as well as maliciously, connect us. And I do feel, and I don't know where I heard it, I've always attributed it to Ida Rolf, but it might not be Ida Rolf, saying that basically all of our technology is projection from our bodies. In other words, we're projecting our own powers. And oftentimes, as I know from anatomy, that people won't believe it till they see it. They say I've got a liver, but I've never seen a liver. Then you show them a liver and they're like, whoa, that is big thing. Like, where'd that come? Is that only in him? Do I have a liver? Holy cow. Right. And it's like, yeah, you got a liver. And it's like, yeah, you also have the power to communicate instantaneously with the world. You also have, what I'm saying? There's like, there's like, what are the untapped human technologies that are endogenous to us that we haven't dared to imagine are our own, and that perhaps we go through this stage of projection before we can sort of reincorporate our own powers, our own superpowers for communication. I mean, do you think the dolphins need cell phones? They don't need cell phones. Their brains are like whales, cetacean brains, they're like 250 million years older than our brains. And they don't need the cell phone. They can just be like, calling baby dolphin, calling baby. I don't know how they do it, but you know what I'm saying? I have a sense that they're not communicating. They're communicating maybe telepathically, or maybe through subtle mediums that are also available to us, and which we've just forgotten how to use. I mean, from the stories I've read of the bush people of the Kalahari Desert, they're 80 miles away. They've chased down an eland until it just fell over in the dirt. They slit its throat over their shoulders and got an 8-mile walk home. And when they get there, the fire has already been lit. Like they know they're coming. They're already singing in a celebration of the kill. And it's like, this is a human potential, and we've just forgotten it. So maybe, just maybe, our obsession with our magical toys will lead perhaps to a point where we are like back to inhabiting that, but maybe in a way that is kinder. Not that it wasn't kind in the first place, but I don't know. I do have hope in that direction.
Do you think that, sometimes I've had some pretty existential conversations with other colleagues and friends, that I think that there's a psychic medium that is from generation to generation, that even that is really passed on, and we don't want to talk about that, or that, it's like, give me scientific evidence that your grandchild or your great-great-grandfather's, DNA has any relationship to how you think today. And I'm like, why wouldn't it? Like, I get that it's like, I look this way, I look at my ancestors and I think, I got the spots on my skin. I look at my mom, she got spots. My grandma, she had spots. Great grandma, spots again. Right. So I get that my form is easy to identify my genetics, but I also think there's a way that we think and how we connect with people that's not just predicated on the environment, but that also has some sort of a genetic predisposition because of what my ancestors managed and what they were going through in their generations. Do you think that that's an actual possibility?
Absolutely. I am also absolutely convicted that my life is healing the lives of my ancestors.
Beautiful.
Because I've come in, I'm literally genetically programmed with their baggage, but maybe I have tools to self-discover or develop epigenetically that they didn't. And so as I do so, I rewrite the history of my great-grandfather. Mm-hmm. I have felt that to the core of my being, that's what's going on, that I'm working things out and sorting things out for me, but I'm sorting things out for humanity as well. We're, again, that continuity. How could it not be? And how could there ever be a disconnection from them? And where did they go? In other words, we're friggin' doing it still. It's just a continuous. It's like whatever. You see these aspen groves, and they have 4,000 acres, but it all started with one seed, or whatever. It's like that's still an ongoing project. My embryo is still unfolding here, and so are the seeds from which it was comprised. Mm-hmm. And let's just throw in the astral plane and the dead while we're at it, because why not? Right? You think we're suddenly disconnected? Do you think my father isn't here with me right now? Of course he's here with me right now. He loves this shit. He's not going to go.
And that's it. I mean, I feel like that's what I mean when I say I'm just a spirit occupying a body. And when I'm out of this body and this body is withering and old and doesn't move well anymore, my brain doesn't work, I'm sure my spirit is going to be shaking that off and so happy to be out of that freaking non-moving, stiff, form. And I'll just be in another form of energy. Like that, if it is true that energy is not created nor destroyed, then life is not the only aspect of my existence, that the ethereal self, my spiritual self, and all of the other components of me will continue to thrive outside of the physical form when I'm not feeling like I want to be here anymore, or when it's my time to go. And that's another thing, you know, I think people have a hard time with death. I mean, I've sadly had to, you know, endure a parental death and my husband dying, and realizing that, you know, the human experience is such a small blip of anything. And I think it creates an opportunity for us to redefine that death is not an ending. It's actually the beginning of something else.
Transition. Different vibe. It's like literally dropping off a pair of shoes at Goodwill. You have used them well, and now it's the plant's turn. The plants and the sea and whoever needs those molecules and wants to take them up, let them have them, because you know, I didn't really, you know, I had explored the ideas of, say, reincarnation or transmigration of souls, two different concepts, but not unrelated, throughout my childhood even, and studies in grad school. But it wasn't until I started doing anatomy that I really got it. And I was like, oh, okay, look at this picture of me when I'm 4. There's not a molecule of that little boy here. Mm-hmm. Right? But I knew who I was then, and I know who I am now. That's the common thread, not the physicality. It's the sense of identity. But it's not even the sense of identity with respect to Gil. Right? I was born with a sense of identity. I wasn't born with a sense of Gil. Gil, I learned.
Gil, is that like ego? Like that?
Yeah, Gil. Well, Gil is just this work in progress. Who's Gil? Oh, well, Gil cries a lot. So, okay, I'm the guy who cries a lot. But I know I'm here whether I'm crying or not. Or I know I'm here whether I'm out in the baseball field swaying back and forth like a little autistic boy. You know, so because like I did that, I was kind of a head banging, swaying kind of person. Nothing against it, you know what I'm saying? But it's just like, is that who I am, or is that what I'm doing? You know, or then whatever. I learned Tai Chi, and now I'm a Tai Chi guy, and I'm waddling around campus with my ass tucked under, like I got a load in my pants, and everyone's like, oh, there goes a Tai Chi guy. It's like, is that who I am, or is it what I'm doing? Or then I'm a dad or a husband or an ex-husband, you know, and all the different iterations of this. Or I'm an anatomy guy to a lot of people, or to some people I'm a fascia guy, and I always find that funny because, like, you know, there's only this little bit of the body, and I'm like, I really like stomachs too. Like, don't sell me short, you know. So it's like, and none of those things are the identities pass like the flesh, right? In other words, we shed our flesh day by day, you know, stomach lining lasts 2 or 3 days, whatever, skin 5 to 6 weeks. I don't know. It's all sloughing off and forming dust bunnies under the couch. And that can't be who I am, nor can the identities, which I slough off just as rapidly, because, you know, some people manage to stick to identity for 40 years or something like that. I haven't been able to hold on to one for more than like 2 years at a time. They just go so fast, right? So they're flashes in the pan along with the body, and yet I still say I am, whether I'm saying I am a Tai Chi guy, or I am a little boy swaying in a baseball field, or I am someone's husband, or someone's dad, or someone's anatomy teacher, or what have you. Like, so what? Someday I won't say that. I'll be retired and I'll be some old fart shitting my pants somewhere. And then I'll say I'm an old fart shitting my pants. That's right. But I still won't be that, because that's not going to last either. Then I'll be someone on the table, and I'll be a proud teacher of anatomy all over again.
Well, I think that's it, right? That's the irreverent question always, is like, who am I? I mean, it is such a powerful thing to ponder. I feel like I spend an incredible amount of time in that query, in that inquiry of wondering, what does that even mean? I am the universe. I am love. I am here.
I don't think there's a more essential question that can be asked. And it's who I am and what is my body have been the driving questions of my life. And so I'm with you there completely. And the answer and the level at which you ask the question keeps changing too. So it's like, yeah, at some point I'm like, who am I? Well, I'm this kid in high school or whatever. And you think that's who you are. Or like you said at the very beginning, and you realize you're not this body. How could you be this body? It's friggin', it's literally like put on a flashlight and look through it and you can see your body flying through the air. It doesn't last long. Right. And so that can't be it as far as I can tell. And since what it boils down for you is that I am, and it boils down for me is that I am, then perhaps it's the same friggin' I am. Now we can say that at an intellectual level, and that's about as far as I've gotten with it. There's a sneaking emotional suspicion that it's true, but it's not something that I can say, intellectually, I actually kind of like, I think we're onto something here, but if you fall into the truth of that, right? If you fall into the truth of that, we pretty much would just stop talking. There's nothing more to say.
I think that's it, and there are times where, I feel like I've been with you in the lab and I don't need to say one word. I could look at you and you are exactly with me. I know 100%, like I'm having a conversation in a sense in this one instant moment that answers everything and is the moment when I think I'm exactly where I need to be at exactly the right time, having this exact experience that was set up for me somehow. And I'm experiencing it in such a conscious way that it's almost like I'm outside of myself, looking at myself having an experience, and I can't explain it any better than that. But it's also this concept of oneness. And if we can dissolve the ego to some extent and to take away the duality and to really feel at peace with life, with being, with the experience. And I think for me, it helps me to just let go of the drama and the who needs power and, who has to be right. And, and I think that there's a lot of, for me, I can look at my life and I think, my gosh, like I hold so much shame or grief or, I don't know. I think that those are big ones for me, like where you don't realize how much shame you have walking around inside of you. And then to just acknowledge it and have the acceptance of it is I think is it's a peaceful moment where you just accept. I would say I accept my judgments and my fears, and I love myself anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah, because it's like even if you got over all that, right? Say you didn't have your judgments and your fears and your shame anymore, right? And say you're just like all cleared up now. No more appointments with the therapist. Everything's done. Like now you're in heaven. What do? Do you think the itch goes away? The itch doesn't go away. The whole friggin' creator's got like an itch. The creation has an itch to unfold, and it doesn't ever go away. There's a little irritation in being, maybe, that keeps it unfolding like sand in an oyster or something like that. And that's where the pearls come from. So we just like, because I've asked myself that question, what do we do? What do we do when we get to heaven? Jingle cymbals and give praise? Like, that sounds really boring. I imagine we just keep creating. I imagine we just keep enlarging our perspective.
What is heaven? Like, what is it, right? It's like, it's home, right? It's right here. It's in front of me. My eyes only just see the spectrum of light that my brain is allowing me to see. But man, if you lift that veil, you realize that there's so much happening right in front of us, and we're just incapable of seeing it, but it is here. I mean, if I could hold an infrared light, I would see other things that I just can't even describe, but I just know that it's here. I mean, just like how you say, my dad's here. I'm sure Chris is here. Like, you get these weird feelings, or suddenly something is there and you're like, well, I mean, I can say that's a coincidence, or it just like, maybe I'm looking for it. You get people with the negative concepts of like, no, when you're dead, it's black and it's over. And I'm like, how do you know until you die? And then when you die and you're sitting here floating around trying to shake everybody saying it's not over, we're all going to get pissed off that like you're knocking stuff off of a table when when nobody's near it and you're freaking us out, right? I think again, I think that part of, and this is really, like with your work with the concept of Somanautic, is to go into the inner being of myself, that when I close my eyes, whether it's to go to sleep or forever, that it's not darkness. As much as the universe is dark, it's never at rest. It's never silent. It's never still. There is something that is always existing, always connecting. And much like the dark matter that we can't quite describe in the universe, our connective tissue is kind of like the dark matter inside of my universe, inside of myself, which is also, again, outside of me. I just can't see it, but it's the exact same. It's the same.
And I think in those still being moments that you mentioned, then the outside is inside.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Nisargadatta. He's like people are like, what's the difference? He's a teacher from many years ago. Anyway, Nisargadatta, look him up. He's cool. I loved him. He just sat on his antelope mat, eating meat that his son brought him, and they'd be like, why do you eat meat? Shouldn't you be kind to all beings? He's like, oh, I'm hungry and it's lunch and my son brought me meat, so I don't complain. And the hippies, they couldn't understand it. Like, why aren't you, anyway, he says, I eat meat and I'm happy and you're angry at me. So who's better off? Like, it was interesting. But he basically, he said, they're like, what's the difference between your world and my world? And he's like, your world is outside of yourself and you're afraid of it. My world is within and I'm in love, And I was just like, oh yeah, this is my guy. I also like the fact that he rolled cigarettes for a living, which also just tickled the hell out of me. And that he had a son, and that he was just like a real person.
Yeah, I think also for me, sitting in stillness and having a meditation practice and finding those moments to just stop being and stop thinking and just feel. And I think that we as a society would do much better if we stopped thinking and we just took some time to feel our way through things. Like what I'm really wanting is, like what I'm feeling is, or what I really want is. And most of the time, I don't think people can answer that question. And so there's a part of us that's like, we get very frustrated to be in this body because like, how come I don't have all the answers, or I can't think, or I can't move the way I want, or I can't think the way I can't get what I want. Now, how come I don't have more money, or I don't have the right relationship, and I don't have a great place to live, and how come this is, and I think, it gets to the point where you want to offer advice to people who aren't asking for it because they're not feeling where they're at all anyway, and you wouldn't get anywhere even if you tried to offer them some advice. They're not listening because they can't feel it. And I think that that is why we suffer. Why so many people, and I feel like suffering is sometimes a choice. The butting, the perpetuation of the suffering is to just not feel where you're at, which is really just dying to feel loved. I think there's a part of that that's, I don't know, a lesson to just kind of constantly inquire about something.
I see your kitty.
Yes, Baron is he's been hanging out with me all day. He was having seizures, sadly.
Aw,
But I did some body work on him over this last week, and he has not had a single one. So if ever,
he's
I think,
beautiful.
I know he's such a sweet animal. It's always nice when we have animals. I think animals are also an impression for me of, that unconditional love. If we could all just be more like cats, we would be, you watch him.
Is that what they're expressing? Is that what unconditional love looked like? I thought it was unconditional ownership.
Just pure love, he just wants to be near me. And I think it would be nice if we were all cats. I think we would be happier if we could be cats. So Gil,
kitty pile.
As our time comes to an end, one of the things that I really love that you've put out this year on the gilhedley.com site is this explorer section and the conversations that you've been having. I thank you very much for having me on one as well. And these very, off the cuff, much like this, very off the cuff conversations about aspects of the body that, even though you're often in a part of the body, I never feel like in any of the conversations that there's actually a separation of a part. It's really always a much bigger picture. Can you talk a little bit about this, like why you kind of went into this part of your, career, I guess, these conversations?
Well, yeah. So that's a feature that you're mentioning, the Live with Gil sessions of the Explorer subscription. And of course, I'm looking for another way to connect with community, and beyond whatever social media or something. So it's a nice way to get together with a group, and usually a couple hundred people come, which is nice. And that constantly makes the questions really rich and compelling. And to just pick a topic, any topic, it's like pick a card, any card, because again, you can enter the whole from any point. And it is my hope to always keep, the conversations in the world of integral anatomy, rather than just descending into the particulars without reference to meaning and context and all of that. And so it's just been really fun to have guests like you and to talk with friends about some fun topic that's not necessarily the first thing that people might associate with you. So like Debbie Rose and I are going to talk on Friday about intersex, and I'm very excited about that. I've been researching the topic. It's an amazing world that I think if we were open to it, we'd know ourselves better as humans, and that there's a lot to be taught from specific individuals. I'm always saying integral anatomy starts with the example in front of you now. That is perfect anatomy. Don't argue with it. That's it, folks. You can accept it. You can't argue with it. And sadly, much as the foreskin has been argued with by our culture and removed, intersex is argued with by our medical community and disappeared. And so I want to appear it for us as legitimate human anatomy that belongs there, just like any other person showing up with their anatomy. And that, so I'm very excited about that one. You can tell. But anyway, and the next, I think after that one, I'm going to talk with Jill with abdominal wall, just because she's just so into the abdominal wall. I was like, I'm going to throw her that bone. So she knows a way around it from the inside out. So I thought, yeah, let's get Jill in there for that. I haven't even told her that yet. So that's our little secret. She doesn't know.
Oh, I can't wait.
That'll be her topic, but I thought I'd give her a thrill.
I love it. Well, and I'm excited to see how you figure out a way to, dissect the nervous system. And I know that beyond the dissection, the one thing that is so incredible is hearing your story, if you will, as you're dissecting, and the thoughts that come up, and how you're kind of connecting dots and thoughts, and not just structure.
stream of consciousness. If you listen to my patter through 200 hours of dissection on what I'm creating, it's like, and yet, you know something? Much to my utter surprise, even I find it compelling. I usually can't stand listening to myself. And then it's like, it's like I'm back there again. And I'm like, man, that was so cool then. And I'm like, it's still cool. I'm seeing it again. And I love editing. The editing process is so much fun because I'm like learning it all over again. You don't learn it the first time, you learn it the 10th time or something. So, and, I was afraid that no one would be able to just keep watching this stuff. But then I was like, I've watched all 3 seasons of Bones. I'm sorry, all 12 seasons of Bones 3 times. We're talking like 700 hours of television just on that one show, right? I did the same thing with The Closer. I watched it all through 3 times. I love these forensic shows, NCIS. So it's like, of course, anyone can watch 200 hours of this stuff. I can watch 1,000 hours of that stuff. You can watch 200 hours of this stuff.
Well, and again, I mean, and every time that I've gone back and watched, like from your original DVDs and watched them myself a dozen times, and then finding clips of it and presenting that in trainings and just being like, this is really important and nobody's going to say this better than Gil, so let's listen to Gil. And it could be just a 2-minute clip of thought. But I think that, again, it's taking anatomy in is complex for people. And you're not only breaking it down, you're creating something analogous to life. It's not about a form. It's not about a cadaver. It's putting it back to a living human body and the thoughts that are in us and how these parts of us are so precious and life is so precious. And so it's a gift, and I think everything from your poetry books to the mornings of the dissections and the conversations and the thoughts and the emotions that come up, I think are really where the education is the most rich. It's the form is just a medium, but but the rest of it is just, you can't bottle it. And then every time I've done it with you, it's different, and it's a new thought. There's new ideas, there's new inquiry. And I just always just appreciate you for just kind of keeping me curious and for just always being just an amazing light in my life. I just so appreciate you.
Thank you, fellow light.
Thank you. Well, Gil, thanks so much for the time. I'm so grateful to speak to you today. And for those of you guys listening, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And until our next Anatomical Gangster session, I wish you all a happy day.
Happy day.